Now, the Zimbabwe and National Chamber of Commerce and Korean Chamber of Commerce and Industry have signed a memorandum of understanding that seeks to promote the development and trade and economic relations between the two nations. Development Economist Prosper Chitambara joins us now to look into Zimbabwe and Korea's economic synergy plans. Prosper, always a pleasure. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful, Prosper. Maybe we can start off by just tracking the relationship that South Korea and Zimbabwe have enjoyed to date. What kind of a trade and friendship relationship has it been?
Well, I think there's a great potential that we are yet to fully tap in terms of our trade and economic relations with South Korea. It's not one of our biggest trading partners, but I think there is potential to boost those trade and economic relations, especially if we are able to get our act together economically and boost our production and productivity. I think we can actually benefit more from that potential.
Let's talk about that potential there. Does it look like? Is it, resources? Is it agriculture? Is it skills? Is it development? Where do you see those areas of opportunities sitting, Prosper?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that we can actually trade with South Korea in terms of agriculture, for example. Of course, this year has been a bit challenging owing to the drought. But I'm sure a lot of our agricultural products could actually have a greater market in South Korea. Also, in terms of mining, I think that's an area again where we could actually be exporting some of our products to South Korea. But of course, there's also a lot that we can tap from South Korea, especially around technology. South Korea is one of the countries that's actually the vanguard in terms of technological developments. As a country, I think that's an area where I think we could benefit more from our trade and economic partnership with South Koreans.
I also want to chat about then, of course, what you as well could benefit in terms of the exchange here. Of course, you'd be exporting very specific things. They could bring, of course, some skills in terms of technology here. But in order for it to not be a one-sided exporting-only relationship or one-sided importing relationship, Prosper, I would like to speak about that as well. What needs to possibly work from a Zimbabwe perspective to make that a reality?
I think it's an area also in terms of investment. I think that's an area that has not been fully tapped again. I think we need obviously more South Korean investments in Zimbabwe, and obviously we also need Zimbabwean investors to go and invest in South Korea. So I think in Zimbabwe, obviously our investment climate, I think we need to improve that. There's still a lot of challenges with respect to the doing business environment. And obviously, I think that also militates against not just South Korean investments, but against even foreign direct investments in general. So I think we need to improve our investment climate as a way of incentivizing greater inflows of foreign direct investment, especially from the Asian economies, such as South Korea, obviously.
With that said, let's talk about, that investment climate there. We know, of course, that we're still tracking the performance of the ZiG, Prosper, and also some of the potential that lies within Zimbabwe. Let's talk about what those actual economic reality in Zimbabwe right now, and improving these little things to ensure that, of course, it's clear that Zimbabwe is open for business.
Yeah. So the issue of macroeconomic stabilization, I think that would be very critical. Because ultimately, no investor wants to invest in an environment that's unstable, both in terms of the exchange rate and even in terms of price stability. So I think that's an area that we need to do a lot of work in terms of sustaining some of the reforms that government has already started implementing. Of course, we've seen there has been some positive outcomes, especially on the inflationary front. There's been a significant decline in inflation, in the inflation rate, both monthly and annual for the month of May. So I think we need to sustain that stabilization, at least for the next 6 to 12 months. I think that will help in terms of restoration of confidence. But also in terms of our tax regime, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, because I believe our tax regime is a bit onerous, and obviously that discourages a lot of investments. Of course, not just foreign investments, but even local investors they've also been complaining with respect to the general tax regime in the country. So I think that's an area that I believe the Minister of Finance should be working on to make it more attractive, both in terms of the tax rates on the one end and the different tax heads, but also even in terms of the tax administration itself. I think that needs to be simplified further as a way of incentivizing investments.
What we are seeing at this point also, Prospers, I think many developed nations from the likes of Asia, even from the West here, of course, trying to come back to the continent, forming new relationships. Other than South Korea, I'm keen to find out about other, kinds of relationships, MOUs that might be on the cards for Zimbabwe as we see this newfound enthusiasm, maybe even a second or third wind of enthusiasm for Africa.
So already what Zelensky has done, I think with their Korean counterpart, I think that's an important step in the right direction, coming up with an MOU, which entails a number of areas for cooperation, even in terms of information sharing, in terms of even business fora. Zimbabwe obviously hosts a number of business fora, like even the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair. I think that will be an opportunity also for Korean businesses to come and showcase what they're actually offering. And also even for Zimbabwean businesses also to go to South Korea and be able to showcase what they actually offer to the Korean market. So I think what ZNCC has done with the Korean Business Forum or Federation, I think that's an important direction. And of course, I think there is also more that could be done by other even associations within the country, whether it's within the agricultural sector and within even other sectors where there are potentialities for cooperation going forward.
Wonderful, Prosper. Well, we're keen to see it all unfold. Thank you for your time this afternoon. It's been a pleasure hearing from you. That was Development Economist Prosper Chitambara.